Okay, so guys and girls, today we will continue our lecture for chapter 7, which is software testing. Okay, so remember last week we have covered up until here, component unit testing. Okay, so as you all see here, this is our mind map last time. Okay, so I will we do a little bit revisions. Okay, so first there are two testing fundamentals activity. Okay, so just remember that previously we also learned about there are 5 stages of software testing where you start with unit testing. After that, you start with after that module testing, and then after that subsystem testing, and then after that system testing, and lastly the acceptance testing. So that is the software testing activity or level, sorry, stages or level. So that after we have learned that stages or level, we also learn the fundamental testing activity, which is we already learned there are two, which is one component or unit testing activity and then system testing. So as you all can see here, this is the testing where the system is already combined. All of the subsystem already combined. Okay. For the component testing, it is like a testing that to test each of the individual component. So individual component, the component may refer to the unit testing, module testing, and then the subsystem. Because the component may refer to the unit, module, or subsystem. We can consider that the three is the component. So the system testing, we have two phases. Okay, so first integration testing, and then second is the release testing. So this integration testing, we do or we implement it to the system. System testing meaning you all can see, right? The system meaning it is already combining all of the subsystem. Okay, so in order to test the system, we can have two phases, which is the integration testing and release testing. In the integration testing, we can have these three technique, and we also can have this additional white box testing. Okay, so because white box testing can be implemented either during the integration testing or release testing. Okay, so in order to test the integration among the system, among the components of the system, we can implement this technique, which is the regression testing, bottom-up testing, or top-down testing. So we already cover all of this previously. And then we also can do the white box testing, like I said. So after we test the integrations in the component, among the component inside that system, we can proceed to the next phase, which is the release testing. So release testing, we can implement these three technique. Okay, so this is a technique, this is the technique. Okay, so these three technique can be implemented during the release testing. So the release testing must be done after integration testing. Okay, so what technique that we can implement during the release testing is we can do black box testing. We can also do white box testing, where this white box testing you can also do during the integration testing, or you can do the performance testing. Okay, so we also already covered this during last week lecture. After that, we proceed to the component or unit testing. So this is the testing when the system, we only test we test the system based on its individual component. So its individual component may refer, the component here is may refer to your subsystem, your modules, or your unit. So there are three techniques that we have covered last week, which is individual functions or method, meaning we test individual function inside that system. So maybe it is in the unit testing lah, during the unit testing. So after that, maybe we test based on, this is the technique lah. So we test based on the object classes. So imagine you all already learned about the object oriented, right? So you test each of the code based on the object of your system. Okay, so remember when I said object, so maybe for example in your um, student portal system, so the object inside your system, maybe your student, I mean a student, a course, okay, so a lecture, okay, so and material, course material, it is also can be an object inside the student portal. Okay, so how to get that object? I think you already learned in during the object oriented class. Okay, so after that, we also learn about the composite component, composite component technique. Okay, under this. So we have stopped last time under this composite component. So now today we will proceed. We still proceed to the composite, because in the composite technique, uh, it is up until this performance test. This is the component unit testing, object class. Here is composite component. Okay. So you remember under component or unit testing, we have the third technique, which is composite component. Okay, so during this composite component, we test the interaction between any parts of your system, or maybe either between module, between subsystem, or between each of the unit or functions inside your system. So interface here, it is not referring to the interface of your UI, or I mean user UI, GUI, graphical unit interface. It is not referring to that. Interface here is not referring to GUI or graphical unit interface. Sorry, not graphical user interface. Sorry. So interface here, when you said, when it is said that it is testing the interface or component interface, so it is not referring to GUI or graphical user interface. No. Okay, so because this is component interface. Component interface meaning the component may refer to either individual functions. Okay, so the component also may refer to individual module. So remember, individual module is actually a collection of dependent functions or functions or procedure or method. Okay, so maybe the component also may be referring to a subsystem. A component may be referring to a subsystem. Okay, so the subsystem, remember, it is actually a collection of dependent modules. Okay, subsystem is collection of dependent modules. Okay, so when it says that component interface, like I said just now lah, the component is may refer either module, functions, or subsystem. Okay, so we will test the interaction among each of the component, how they will interact to each other. Okay, so if you say you want to test the interface between modules, so meaning to say that you are testing how each of the modules interact to each other. Okay, so if you say that you are testing subsystem interface, it means that it is the process of testing how each of the subsystem interact with each other. Okay, so composite component meaning to test the interface or interaction between parts. So this part here may refer to the component. The component may also refer to your modules or subsystem or each individual functions. Okay, understand about composite component? No? Okay, very, very only, yes. Okay, so if you don't understand, then you all can ask me again lah. How about Ivan? Do you understand what is the component interface? Can you please explain it to me? You type or maybe you can open your mic. What do you understand about component interface? Because I'm not sure either you all really understand or not if I didn't hear it from yourself. How about Lim? Can you please tell me your understanding about composite component or the component interface? Yes, Lim, where are you? Can you please acknowledge if you are here? Okay, there. Okay, yes, Lim is here. Okay, so Daniel said, is it just testing every each functions in the system? So wait, I want to listen the answer from Ivan and Lim first before I answer questions from Daniel. So Ivan or Lim, you can say that if you don't know, then you can honestly tell you don't know. If you are requiring more time, then I can give you time. but don't just silent lah. Okay, so Lim don't understand. How about Daniel? Sorry, not Daniel. Ivan. Not sure. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so I will explain again. So Daniel, it is not testing every each function because that one you do in here in the second the object class or in the individual function method in an object. Okay, so you test each individual functions during this. In this technique. You remember we have okay, so you have okay, so here individual function or method, or you can also test each of the function here lah, especially here because this is you test each of the individual object. If you want to test individual function, then you test it using this function, this technique. Okay, so individual function or method. So here is okay, so here what happened in the third technique is before I ask I answer questions from Daniel, I want to explain again here the stages. The stages of the level of testing. Okay, so here. Okay, so you all remember because this is important to understand here because it will related to the technique, the composite technique later. Okay, so when you do the first unit testing, you test each individual functions. Okay, so that you test each individual functions. Okay, so in the module testing, you collect more than one individual functions that is dependent to each other to be one module. Okay, so that is what we call as a module. So a module, in short, the definition of it is the collection of more than one functions or maybe more than one object or maybe more than one procedure. Okay, so that is a module. It is a collection of dependent functions. Okay, remember, module is collection of dependent function, meaning we have more than one function that is dependent to each other to become one module. So we test that one module. Okay, so inside that one module, there are more than one collections of dependent functions. Okay, so understand the module, and then after that, the systems. It is a collection of more than one dependence modules, meaning in one subsystem there will be more than one modules that is dependent to each other. Okay, so the system testing, it is the combination of all of the subsystem inside your system. Okay, so far can understand unit, module, subsystem, and system. Can Daniel? Okay, okay. So after that, okay. So why I am asking you all about this because um, I want to refer to the component interface just now. What we have learned in the composite testing just now, it says that we test the interaction among the component interface, right? So the component here is referring either to the unit. The component also may be referring to a module. The component also may refer to the subsystem. So the composite function, the composite, yeah, I forgot the name. So this, the composite component, meaning to say that we test the interaction among either each of the unit or each of the modules. I mean the modules and one modules with another modules, or we test the interaction one subsystem with another subsystems. Okay, so that is the composite component technique. Okay, so where we test the interactions among the component. The component may refer to either modules, subsystem, or unit or function. Okay, so that is what it means by, yeah, the component composite. Okay, here. Okay, so component interface. So in this technique, we will test the interaction between the component. So the component here referring either maybe if you are testing interaction between subsystem, then you test the interaction between the subsystems lah. And then or maybe you test the interaction between all one modules to another modules. So that is also under composite component. Okay, so the component here may refer to unit testing, subsystem, or modules. Yes, Farah. So that is the conclusion. Okay, so all understand about this composite component, composite component technique. Okay, so this is not only referring to only one function. Uh, okay, so under the composite component, we have another type, which is interface testing. Okay, so the interface testing, it is one of the type of component, a composite component technique. Okay, so you remember under the composite component, there are interface testing. So in the interface testing, we test few items. Okay, so which is one of the items that you test during the interface testing is you test the parameter. Parameter meaning you all remember, right? The parameter is something that is the input. The parameter is the argument, or the parameter is the input one function or one modules or one subsystem needs the input. Okay, so meaning the parameter is all of the data that is passed from one method to another, or maybe the data that is passed from one subsystem to another subsystem, or maybe the data that is passed from one modules to another modules, or also the data passed from one function to another function. So that is one of the item that we will test during the interface testing. Okay, so meaning we test the data that is passed among each of the component. Okay, so remember when I said a component here, it is referring to either module, subsystem, or functions. Okay, so after that, it also need the second item that need to be tested during the interface testing is the shared memory interface. Okay, so let's say you all know about the public variable, right? Public variable. You all understand about public variable. One variable that is used by a lot of that is publicly can be used by all of the functions inside the system or inside that module. Understand, right? The public variable. When you do the coding, there's one variable that you declare outside or the utmost area where it can be used by each of the function inside that class or inside that system or inside that functions. Have you all? Okay, so Noel, no. Okay, so I hope the others who are silent understand now what I'm saying. Usually, a shared variable will uh, will share the same memory. Okay, so a public variable will create a memory, and then that memory space in the memory in your RAM, and then it will be used by each of the functions inside your system. Okay, so your public variable can create one public space in the RAM in your memory RAM, memory computer, which is RAM. Okay, so then and that public variable will be shared by each of the function inside your system. Okay, so when we have that kind of situation in our coding, then we also need to uh, test that public variable, because that public variable is using the shared memory inside your RAM. So, for example, function A also use that system, and then function A use that public variable, and then after that, function B also use that variable. So how we can test it is we check what happened to the public variable when it is used by more than one functions. Okay, so that is what happened when we test the shared memory interface. Okay, so if you all don't understand, you all can raise your hand or just ask lah. Okay, so because I cannot waste our time to ask everyone here, either you all understand. So if you don't understand, you can just directly ask. Okay, so we proceed. Okay, so so this is the explanation of the shared memory interface. Block of memory is shared between procedure and functions. Okay, so usually block of memory will be shared between each of the functions when you are sharing the same public variable, which is can be used by all of the function inside the system. Okay, so after that, the third item that you test during the interface testing, which is under the composite component technique, is procedural interface. So during the procedural interface, this is what happened. Subsystem encapsulate a set of procedure to be called by other subsystem. Okay, so meaning to say that you test each of the set of the procedure that is called by when there's some subsystem that call the procedure if there's for example subsystem A, so subsystem A have a procedure maybe procedure A.1 A.2. Okay, so that procedure A.1 and A.2 maybe can be called by other subsystem. So maybe other subsystem that called the procedure A.1 and A.2, maybe it is called by subsystem B. Okay, so when the procedure is called by other system, we may check each of the procedure. What happened to the value inside the procedure when it is called by other subsystem. So how you can do that? Maybe using the debug feature. The compile when you debug your system and then you check each of the code. Okay, line of the code. What happened when it goes to the line where the subsystem B called the procedure from subsystem A. Okay. So after that, we proceed to the message passing interface. So this is the fourth item that should be tested during the interface testing. Okay, so this message passing interface is when the subsystem requests service from other subsystem. So maybe request service or info or informations. When the subsystem requests the service from informations from other systems, and then you test either the subsystem that is requested can provide the service that is requested from another subsystem. So we test either that service can be provided by subsystem A to the subsystem B, which is the subsystem that requested that service. Okay, so if subsystem A failed to provide the service, then the system have failed the test of the interface lah. Meaning the interaction between subsystem A and subsystem B has failed. So we need to fix subsystem A, which cannot provide that service, so that it can provide that service to subsystem B. Okay, so that is what happened during the interface testing. So just remember, interface testing is actually one type of composite component because we are testing the interaction between a component. Meaning, we test whatever data or shared memory or procedural or service that is become the input from one component, become the output from one component, and it is also become the input for another component. Okay, so remember we didn't test each individual component, but we test whatever either parameter, memory, procedural, or services that is shared among each of the components. So that is happening inside the composite component. Okay, so specifically in the interface testing, these are the items that need to be checked thoroughly. Okay, so beside that, beside all of the technique that we have learned so far, there are also other technique. So other technique, it is not fixed to either use, it is a technique for component or a system testing. But this is other technique that is not belongs to any either component or the system lah. Okay, so which is transaction flow testing or thread testing. Okay, so in this technique, we test the multiple process. Okay, so meaning we run more than one process at one time. Okay, so it is even best approach. Okay, so this is the example. Okay, so let's say in your system, you have maybe people will call it as a program 1, program 2, or program 3, or program 4. Or maybe this is module 1, module 2, module 3, module 4. Or maybe this is subsystem 1, subsystem 2, subsystem 3, subsystem 4. Okay, so we test each of these components, and then we input or we run them at one time. And then we see either they can crash or either the system can crash or not. Okay, so for example, maybe in the student portal, maybe this module is for the student registration, or maybe we can call it as a subsystem for the student registration, and then this is maybe the subsystem for student course registration, and then maybe this is the student course co-curriculum registration. So we may run all of this function by different tester, but we run it at the same time. So that is multiple thread testing. So because we test all of the function at one time, because we want to see either the when you run all of that functions, or all of that module, or all of that subsystem in one time, either it can make error or not, either it can produce error or not. Okay, so that is under the thread testing or transaction flow testing. So another testing technique. Okay, so that is back-to-back testing. So in this back-to-back testing, we test your system based on the version. Okay, so let's say you have student portal that you developed on March this year, and then after that, there are enhancement on that system that is actually finished after July this year. So the March version you called as version 1, July version you called it as a student portal version 2. So what you do is you test them with the same data. Okay, so use the same data that you used to test the version 1 in March 2021, and then you use the same data to test the version 2. Okay, so after that, okay here, so after that, um, we check the result. Either it is resulting the same result or not. Okay, so after that, if there's a difference, then and then the tester will come out with a difference report. Difference report meaning to say that it is a list of result that is different from version A and version B. Okay, so they are actually beside the thread testing and back-to-back testing. There's also another testing technique that we can implement, which is peak load testing, storage testing, procedure testing, recovery and human factor, and also etc. Why etc.? Because this testing may evolve in the future. New expertise will introduce new technique. Okay, so that's why it is etc. here, because software engineering is a field that is still evolving. Okay, so there are new strategy technique that will come later. Okay, so before we proceed to this testing strategy, we go back to our Jamboard. Okay, so you remember just now? Who remember what is one technique under the composite component? I will ask one student, Jeremiah. Do you remember one type of composite component technique? And can you please write it down in our Jamboard? Can you access this? Wait, I share first. Wait, miss. Okay, wait, I share again because previously it didn't automatically share though, although previously it is shared. Okay, so can you all see this? Okay, so all of you, but wait, I share the link first. Present to meeting. This step. Okay, what happened? Yeah, wait, how to share the link? Here lah maybe. Okay, so I copy this Jamboard. Try click that, Jeremiah. All of you are here already. Okay, so can you please put one type of composite component that we just learned? So, previously, just now. Okay, yes. Good. So, yes. So, interface testing is one of the type of composite testing. Okay, so there are four things that we will test. Uh, okay, so the four items that we test during the interface testing is, I will ask four students. There are four items that we test during the interface testing. I will ask Chuck, Daniel, Chuck, Daniel, Jonathan, and Wong. Four students. Zisheng Wong, Put your name, because I don't know who. Okay, Sharp. Okay, yes. Sharp, Jonathan, Wong, and who else? I mentioned just now. I know. Oh, Jonathan. Okay. Dear Jonathan. Okay. So there are two lagi, which is Decision Wong and who else? Okay, so Wong. Let me see again who I asked just now. I forgot who I mentioned just now. There are four, right? Yeah. Whoever remember, you can. Daniel. Okay, Daniel. Aish, my short-term memory ni. Yes, so yes, Daniel. Yeah, but there are two procedural interface. Yes, correct. Okay, so these are the things that we should test during the interface testing. Yeah, so correct. So beside the system testing and component testing, and then this is all of the testing that we have learned. like I said just now, there are any other testing that is actually not belongs to either system testing or component testing. So that testing is actually have its own note under the fundamental activity. So there are two that we have learned previously. Okay, so I want to ask Russell and Kelvin. There are two other technique that we have learned just now that is not belongs or not under any system testing or component testing. So I will ask Kelvin and Russell. Yes, Kelvin and Russell. Okay, human factor testing. But this one we only mentioned, right? But we didn't cover it. So there are actually two that is have some explanation. So I want the two that have the explanation. Subsystem testing, human factor testing. Ah, okay. So subsystem testing, I think that is incorrect lah, Kelvin. Can you please try again? Back-to-back testing, yes. That is, there's module testing, also no. No, no, try again. Yes. Ian helped Kelvin. Yeah, ngam. Okay, so Farah also ngam. Thread testing. Okay, so, okay, thank you, Jonathan, for helping Kelvin. Okay, so, yeah. So there are two other testing that is independent from system testing and component testing, which is back-to-back testing, where we test a version versus version. We use the same data, and then we test the version 1 versus the version 2 using the same data, and then after that we compare the result, and then we come out with the difference report. It is containing whatever result that is different from version 1 versus version 2. Okay, so that is back-to-back testing. So multiple thread testing, we test the different modules or subsystem inside our system. We run it at one time, and then we see either the system can working properly or not, or either it can produce any error or not when you run all of the modules or subsystem in one time. So that is happen during multiple thread testing. Okay, so we finish with all of the technique. Okay, so technique, remember, they are fundamental testing activity. They are mainly two, which is system testing and component testing. Under each of these activity, okay, so this system testing also we separate it into two phases or activity. First, integration testing and then release testing. Under each activity, we can choose different technique. Okay, so regression testing, bottom up, top down testing, black box testing, performance testing, white box testing, and then all of this also, it is all what we call as a technique. Okay, so this one all technique under component or unit testing. This one, all of this is a technique under system testing. Okay, so this one also a technique, testing technique. I think I will need to make it in the similar. Yeah, I cannot apa sudah. I cannot. I cannot edit. Maybe because I apa. So I want to. What I want to do is actually I want to make it all of the technique in the same color so that all of you can clearly apa. Okay, so yeah, who can make it in the same color? Please do it this because I cannot. Oh, when I click this can, I cannot already. Who can? Okay, make it pink lah. Ngam. Okay, so here also, this is all technique. Okay, so this is meaning activity lah. Okay, so this is the main activity. This is the activity under this system. But this one also technique. Yes, ngam, ngam. Okay, so this is also a technique. Make it pink lah, so that we know that pink is referring to testing technique. So this is testing technique. Okay, so this one also testing technique. You can make the interface testing maybe pink also, but light pink. I don't know. Make it a little bit different pink from the main technique lah, because it is under apa kan? Composite component. No, this is not pink, because this is the item that you will test during the interface testing. The technique is interface testing, but this is you can make it yellow lah. Okay, so this all of orange here make it pink, and also. Oh, not many color to choose. Oh, okay. So, but actually, you all know lah, interface testing is actually one type of composite testing. A composite component. And here's Pero kan ni? The one who helping me. Oh. Oh, Ian. Oh, okay. So, Ian, please make this ping also. Black box testing, performance testing, and white box testing. So, it is actually a technique also. Testing technique. Okay. Correct. And then this is also a technique. Sorry, this is not activity, but it is a technique, but it is not under either component or system. So this is also ping, back to back and multiple thread. I think system testing and component testing, you can make it yellow. Is there any color or only this, right? So maybe you can make it green lah, green. Green, still green. Okay, so this is still technique even though it is under this activity because I don't know where to park this because this is actually a technique but it doesn't belong to either component or system testing. Yes, Ngam. So this one can be orange. Okay, so all of you, I hope all of you can, we make here the legend. Thing is testing technique. Okay, so yellow is like it is activity lah. Testing activities. Huh. I can edit already. Oh, maybe I it need me to create my own. If it is not mine, if the sticker is not mine, so I cannot change. I think. So after that, green is uh, oh, this is main testing activity. This is the testing activities. Big. How to make these things smaller? Oh, here. Huh. Caption. Okay, so after that, blue. Blue is the faces under system testing. And then, pink. Pink is the testing technique. After that, the orange is item to be tested. During interface testing. So, we all can refer to this legend lah. Okay, so this is what we have learned so far. Okay, so I hope you all can get the mind map of it because there's a lot of terms that we have learned, right? So it's easy to confuse if we didn't make this mind map. Okay, so the next lesson will be the testing strategy. Okay, so how it is different with the testing technique. Okay, so before we proceed to the testing strategy, we can take 5 minutes rest lah. Okay, so we go back at 3:35. Okay, all. Okay, so guys and girls, we meet again. Okay, so take a deep breath. Take, take a deep breath, and then don't really forget about whatever technique that we have learned previously, but you all can macam macam mana, don't really forget about that, but you can ignore because um, we already learned all of the technique. If you forget about that, then it is okay if you remember all of this lah. Okay, so remember the pink one is the technique. Okay, so now we proceed to the strategy. Okay, so testing strategy. Okay, so yes, so the definition of testing strategy here is the testing strategy is the general approach to the testing process rather than a method of devising or workout of particular system or component test. Okay, so based on these formal definitions, I want to ask your understanding. Maybe I will call uh, some name lah. Okay, so I will call Noel. Noel, I think I didn't ask previously. Okay, so what do you understand about these definitions? What is actually the testing strategy? Hmm. So all of you don't be heran because I'm wearing mask here even though I am in a room. This room actually we have one machine that emitting dust. So that's why I'm wearing mask. Like determining which testing method is suitable for different scope of system. Okay, yes. Okay, correct. Okay, so yeah, so this is your understanding, right, Noel? So this understanding of yours is can be accepted because this strategy, after all of the testing that we have learned previously in here, all of this being one. Okay, so we already know what is the regression testing, what is the bottom up. We know that during the release testing we can do this testing. Okay, so does it mean that we need to implement all of this type of this technique, this type of technique in our system? Okay, so does it mean that it all of this testing technique is compulsory to be implemented in our one system? I want to ask somebody. Farrell. Okay, Farrell. So do you think it is compulsory that we implemented all of this testing in our system, in our software that we develop? Yes, Farrell? Yes, the thing. Yes, I want to ask. Celine. Celine, is Celine here? Okay, Celine. Celine, do you think that we need to implement all of this testing technique when we developing a system or a software? Yes. Okay, so let me ask another student. How about Calvin? Do you think that we need to implement all of this technique? No. So can I know why, Calvin? Maybe you have some reason because your answer is different from the previous two.
Sometimes not suitable.
Sometimes not suitable. Yeah, so actually the answer for Celine and Farah, it doesn't necessary for all of this technique implemented. So it is depending on this on our system that scenario or situation or constraint of the system that we are developing. Okay. So because maybe in the integration testing, maybe it is enough for you to do top-down testing. Okay. So for example, if the system is developed by another person, you never involved in the coding. So usually for this kind of testing, so because no, you are not the programmer, so you don't know the line of code, each of the line of the code. So maybe you can just implement the either regression testing, okay? So it is depending on the constraint, on the condition. So, but I cannot mention all of the condition that maybe you all will meet in the future. So, but it is enough for all of you to know that each of these technique will be suitable to be run during what phase, what activity. Okay, so that is the responsibility of you as a software engineer to know the technique, all of this technique. Okay, so for example, another example is black box testing. Okay, so during the release testing, okay, so for example, like I said just now, like the condition where you are not the developer, you maybe you don't even have the access to the code source code of the system. Okay, so what you can do is only black box testing because there is no way for you to do the white box testing since you don't have the source code. Okay, so that is the some of the condition that where you can choose some of the technique that is suitable for your current condition. Okay, so that is actually what we will what is the strategy. It's like what Noel said here. It is like determining which testing method or testing technique here that is suitable for your system. Okay, so based on all of this system, all of this testing, kan, this technique, we create one strategy in our strategy that maybe we mention in our strategy that we put in the testing plan. Okay, so the testing plan that we what we will going to learn after this. Okay, so our testing strategy, in our strategy, maybe we put that in the integration testing, we only will do the regression testing. In the release testing, we only do the black box testing. So after that, during the interface, we will test the message passing interface. Okay, so maybe we also will do the back-to-back testing. Okay, so that strategy, we put I mean, that kind of planning we called LIS a strategy. Okay, so we proceed to the strategies. The strategy. So, like Noel said, it is the process of like determining which technique, which method that's suitable for your system. Okay, so there are two types of strategy, types or technique. Okay, so the testing strategy can be separated into two, which is proactive and reactive. Okay, so like it is states here, testing strategy is also known as test approach. Define how testing will be carried out. Okay, so the testing approach have two technique, which is proactive and reactive. So what is proactive? A proactive is the approach that you plan, which the test design process is initiated as early as possible in order to find and fix the defects before the build is created. And then the reactive, it is the approach in which the testing is not started until after design and coding are completed. So that means during you do the testing, later you will create a testing plan. Okay, so the testing plan is containing your testing strategy. So when you create your testing plan during the early stage, before before the build of your system is created. So we call it as a proactive strategy, meaning before even any error or bugs or um, um, I, before any error or bugs or even the system completed yet, you already have your plan or your strategy. The reactive is depending on some trigger. Okay, so meaning here the trigger here is the approach. You only created the approach after the design and coding completed. Okay, so there are two types lah, which is first you create your approach earlier before the build is created. Reactive, you only create your testing strategy or your approach after the design and coding are completed. So that is the difference. Okay, so after that, we proceed to the test case design and planning. So, how this test case design and planning related to whatever that we have learned previously is, remember we have learned proactive strategy, reactive strategy. So the strategy usually you will put in your planning lah. So there will be a document inside it. Okay, I mean there will be a document that will be created during this activity. So your strategy, either it is proactive or reactive, will be inside your planning. Okay, so um, so test case design and planning. So test planning is concerned with setting out standard for the testing process rather than describing the product test. Okay, so it is saying maybe it says that it is setting out standard for the testing process. So in here, you, like I said just now, you maybe will mention that the testing for this system will use black box testing for the release testing. Okay, so you mention what technique you will use, all of your strategy lah, or your approach in order to do the testing. So in order to yield a useful testing result, a testing plan should be produced. Okay, so these are the contents inside your testing plan. So like I said just now, the testing plan is maybe a document. Not maybe lah. It must be a document. Your testing plan must be documented. So these are the items that you must include inside your testing document. Which is the first is the testing process, how you will do the testing lah, the process, what is the first step you will need to do, and then the requirement traceability, tested item, testing schedule, this the example, okay, the hardware and software that is required to do the testing, and then the constraint that you assume or that you face during the testing. Okay, so okay, so this is the explanation of each of the item that should be inside your testing planning document lah. Okay, so first is the testing process. So in your test plan, there must be a testing process. Okay, so the testing process, you may mention about this. Okay, so you will say that maybe in your system, in your testing, these are the, you remember all of this? This is the testing stages or testing levels. Okay, so all of these testing stages should be included in your testing process. Okay, so after that, the requirement traceability. So this requirement traceability, so maybe you will, because you do the testing, like I said just now, previously, the SRS is the most important thing. It is like a contract between you and the client, and then it is like a best planning of your system and the developer. all of the user, all of the developer will refer to your SRS. So in your testing plan, you will um, trace which testing is belongs to which requirement inside your SRS. Meaning all of your testing must be based one requirement. It must be traceable uh, and related to your SRS. Okay, so you all remember, right? During the system requirement, when we creating our system requirement, there will be a 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. So that number is the unique number that we can refer. Either, for example, here the unit testing, it is referring to SRS item maybe 1.1. Okay, so module testing is the testing that is referring to SRS item 1.2. Okay, so understand requirement traceability, meaning whatever testing in our test plan, in our planning, in our test plan document, it must be relating to SRS document that we created previously. It must be traceable. Okay, so after that, tested item. Okay, so the tested item, we mentioned what are the things that we need to test during the testing lah. Either it must cover program modules, the user procedure, and operator procedure, and then the testing schedule. So this is what you have in your Gantt chart tu lah. Okay, so whatever the schedule you mentioned in your Gantt chart previously, so you can reuse it again and then put it, maybe you just highlight the testing part lah, the testing schedule from your previous Gantt chart, and then you put it again in your test plan for the Gantt chart, for the testing. But you make it details lah. If you put in your Gantt chart previously, the testing phase is 2 weeks without any details, right? So in your next Gantt chart, in your test plan Gantt chart, you may say that day one of that 2 weeks period, maybe day one will be testing module one, and then day two will be testing module two. Okay, so you just make it details as possible lah in your Gantt chart for the test plan. After that, testing, recording, or procedure, or the example of the testing. Okay, so that is the 5 item that you should put in your test plan document. So this is the example of the test case. I think this example already shared in our earlier slide lah, in this slide also, in this chapter. So this is the example of how we create the test case. So this test case can be used either um, in any level of testing process. So remember, there are 5 level or stages, right? Unit test, module test, subtest, subsystem test, and then system test, and then after that, UAT, user acceptance test. So you can use this test case in each of the level or the stages. You can create this kind of test case in order for you to plan your test for each of the testing, for each of the testing level or stages. Okay, so so that is actually under the testing recording procedure. Okay, so meaning the example of data, or yeah, the example of data, the example of the things that you will need to test. So that is should be included under testing recording procedure or example. So after that, inside your test plan also, it must contain the hardware and software requirement. Yes, so for example, in order to test your system, maybe you need the Samsung Samsung Galaxy Alpha, or and it must have operating system Android, and it must have 2 gig GSM, 2 gig GSM. I'm not sure what is GSM, and then 3 gig UMT. So I'm understand. I don't know what is GSM and UMT lah. Okay, but maybe when your system is a mobile application and it also a web app application, then you must include that hardware and software requirement inside your testing. If not, then there will be additional cost that is actually didn't recorded. Then at the end, you will need to um, add another extra money because it is not recorded previously and it doesn't include it in the calculation. So this is important lah, because to know and to plan the budget. Yeah, so after that, the constraint, for example, the test item availability, is test resource availability, time constraint. So meaning test resources availability, meaning the available time availability for your end user or maybe your tester. So we need to make sure that everyone that should involve in the testing must be available at the same time. Okay, so we need to mention all of that inside the test plan lah. Okay, so I think we can do Jamboard for that one. Okay, so in this second page, we go to the testing strategy. Testing strategy, this one I will not ask you all lah because this is so simple. Okay, so there will be proactive and reactive. So testing strategy is can be divided into two: proactive, yeah, and reactive. So your strategy, this is earlier. Sorry, this is done, should be done uh, initial, sorry, done before the before building before building the system. Reactive, it is done after the system, the design completed. The design and system completed. Okay, so what is this? This is general approach or planning of how the testing should be done to the system. And then it is recorded in test plan. So this is the definition of testing strategy. So test plan. We go to the next page where the test plan have seven test item. Okay, so can I ask 7 students? Ivan, Farah, Lim, Kelvin, Ivan, Farah, Lim, Kelvin, Shak, Russell, and Jeremiah. Please put the item that must be inside the test plan. The 7 items. Hmm. Put your name, sorry ya. Please put your name. Farah kah? Oh yeah, Farah. Yes, so Kelvin, yes. Up until Jeremiah. I just mentioned based on the alphabet. Hmm. I don't know how to make the word small. Oh, hindi apa. It doesn't matter because we didn't put more info inside this page. It is enough. We put all of the item inside the test plan. The explanation, you all, if you forgot, then you need to open back our slide lah. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so yes, there are 7 items. Uh, okay. So these are the 7 items. Okay, so yes. Okay, so we try our next, which is the 3 approaches. Okay, so the 3 approaches of how you can create the test plan. Okay, or how you can create the test case design and planning. There are 3 approaches. First is requirement-based testing approaches, meaning we create the planning and the test case design based on the requirement from the SRS. So maybe we make it, maybe we organize our test plan based on the requirement. Maybe in our first chapter is all of the testing regarding requirement 1.1. Okay, so after that, in the second section in our test plan, it is all of the planning and test case design based on requirement 1.2 from your SRS. Okay, so that is what it means by requirement-based testing plan. Okay, so the advantage of this is it surely will meet the system requirement because we plan and we design our test plan based on each of the system requirement that is mentioned in the SRS. So surely it will meet the system requirement. And then we after that the second approaches is partition testing, where we partition the testing plan based on the input and the output type. Okay, so maybe okay, so this is the example. we do the we test we design our test case based on partition. Okay, so for example, we test the system based on month. Let's say we are testing our reporting module. Okay, so let's say we are testing our reporting module and then we are creating a test case for that reporting module. So maybe we will test it based on some partition. So for example, we test when we put a negative month in our system. So our expectation must be error lah. Okay, so remember the test case table. Okay, so maybe the first partition we test with the invalid month, for example, the negative lah. And then after that, the second test case we put the 0. So it is not negative, but still invalid months, right? So, but we still make it another test case because we want to see the response of that system. Okay, so suppose it should return error lah. And then after that, we proceed 1 until 12, which is the valid month. Okay, so after that, we test another test case is we test using where the month is over than 12. Okay, so it should be error lah when it is 13. Okay, so that is the example of partition testing. The the second approaches in order to create your test case design. Okay, so invalid partition, valid partition, invalid partition 2. Okay, so program. So the third approaches in order to create the test case design and planning is structural testing. Structural testing is based on the program or the subsystem or the component inside your system. Maybe you test it based on each of the module inside the subsystem, or maybe you test it based on subsystem, meaning to say that you have a test case that only to test a function of maybe student registrations or subsystem. We call maybe it is subsystem or function or subsystem lah. We call it as a subsystem. Maybe we want to create a test case table too, just to test the student registration, and then another second test case is just for student course registration. So that is what it means by structural testing. So that is the three approaches. Okay, so wait, I saw that there's a. Oh, okay, I don't know how to make it small. Okay, so we go back to our Jamboard. The approaches. This one also I will not ask lah because it is so simple. Test three approaches to do the test case design and planning, which is first requirement testing. Second is structural testing. What is the third? I think that structural is the third approaches lah. The second tu yang I forgot. Testing, partition testing. Okay, sorry partition testing. Okay, so these are the three approaches. Okay, so we proceed to our next topic, which is the guideline, testing principles and guideline. There is actually there are no exact or fixed guideline to do the testing. There are in the world there are no tester that can confirm that if you follow this step and then your system will be free from error. Okay, so I I what I I confirm that there are no tester that can say like that. Okay, so in testing there are no fixed uh, technique, or there are no fixed step or guidelines that really can make sure that the system will be free from error. But these are the guidelines that is we can make it as a guideline, but it is just as a guideline lah. The real uh, technique or all of the strategy that you really need to do in your future system letter, it is based on your own, or based on the constraint of your current system. Okay, so it is based on your tester judgment, discretion. Okay, so but we can use this as a general guidelines lah. If we really don't have any idea on how to do the testing, then we can refer back to this guideline. Okay, so what are the guidelines to improve the software testing? So this is the first guideline that we must follow lah. For me, this is the must. Even though it is a guideline, but it is a must for you to fulfill this, because it is important, because all tests should be traceable to customer requirement. Okay, so meaning to say that each of your tests must refer back or traceable to your SRS. Whatever you put inside the SRS, it must be have a link with your test. So it doesn't have no point for you to test something that is not related to your system requirement. It is a waste of time and resources lah. Okay? So it must be traceable to the customer requirement. Whatever testing that you do, it must refer back to the SRS. Okay, so when to start the test planning, meaning when you should start to do the test plan. Okay, so uh, okay, so the test plan, when to start the test planning is you do the test plan, meaning the document following the requirement model that from the SRS, and then after that you do the test case based on the design model, because in your SRS you will have a design. In your SRS, or maybe you have another software design document. So test case based on the design model. because some system, the most important thing is SRS. So usually in the SRS, maybe there will be including the design of your system. So either you have design inside your SRS or you have another software design document. So it will the test case based on your the design model. Okay, so after that, you may implement the Pareto principle where in your code, you must assume that there will be 80% the error. There will be 80% error. So don't be so positive about your code. So you must assume that there will be a 80% error, so that you will set in your mind that you will find the error as much as possible. Okay, so when you do the testing, you start from the small item first. After that, you go to the large. Okay, so meaning to say that it is better if you start maybe using unit testing first, and then after that go to the system testing lah. So exhaustive testing is not possible. So meaning to say that if you want to do the exhaustive testing, it is um, it is not possible. Exhaustive testing is, if I'm not mistaken, I will get back to you later about this. But if I'm not mistaken, exhaustive testing is a testing that like a white box testing, where you test each line of the code. Okay, so it is not possible. It says that it is not possible. Okay, so and then the another guideline is the tester must be from the independent third party. Meaning to say that the tester must be not from the development team, because like previously what we have discussed is it is to avoid the bias. Okay, so the tester must be independent third party, independent from the development team, someone that never involved with the coding. Okay, so I think we have finished. In this lesson, we have already learned the software testing fundamentals. Okay, so there are two software testing fundamentals. If you all remember again in our Jamboard. Okay, so software testing fundamentals, there are two, which is system testing, component testing, and then after that we have learned testing technique and strategy. So all of this pink one is the testing technique, and then the strategy is whatever that we have learned here, which is proactive and reactive. Okay. Okay. So after that, we have already learned about what should be included in the test case design and planning. And then we also have covered about the testing guideline and principle. So far, any questions, guys and girls, about these four topics? So far, so good? No questions. Can I have a raised hand, please? If you have no problem, no question, then you can raise your hand. Okay. Yeah, thank you for your attention. Okay, so if no, then we can discuss about our no question but too much testing knowledge in this chapter. Yeah. So actually, like I said, if you don't really remember the details, it is enough for you to remember this. Yeah. But This is I think the main important thing inside this chapter is this one. Okay, so you need to remember this connection. After that, if you forgot the details, baru you all can check back your slide or your notebook. Okay, so what important things for all of the theory knowledge is for you to connect and relate each of the theory. Okay, so by having this kind of mind map, it can help you to connect each of the knowledge. Okay, so if you forgot each of the details, what is a regression testing? Then you can go back and open your slide. Okay, so I remember Kelvin said that last time so much testing but no testing that tests the security. Like Kelvin, yeah. So you said there are no testing that test the security, but actually, if you do all of this testing, you already did the security testing. For example, if that system or that module that you tested it is um, relating to login. Okay, so if your module that you are testing is related to the login, you know that in the login there must be only the authorized person that need to be logged in, right? So when you do the testing here, maybe you do the white box testing. Okay, so in the white box testing, you check each of line of the code in your module login. So in your module login, you may check that either each of the password is decrypted or encrypted, or either encryption is done or is implemented inside that login functions. So by using or by undergoing the white box testing, you already did the security testing. Okay, Kelvin? So understand ka? When you do the testing, the the security is something that inside the system already. So when you tested it correctly, then it is actually already cover the security. Like I said just now, maybe if you do the white box testing, so in the white box testing, it means that you go through each of the line of the code. And then when you see the line of the code, for example, the login, so in the login functions, it must have the encryption function. Each of the password that is go through the system must be encrypted first, and then after that it must be decrypted later. So if that kind of feature is already inside that system, you can say that your system is safe enough lah for your login function lah. Okay, so you also do the performance testing. This performance testing, maybe you will test a lot of user at the same time log into your system, and then some of your user you may test, or you may ask them to produce the error, or to include the invalid login. So what happened? Okay, so um if you do each of this testing, or when you do the testing properly, usually it already cover the security lah, in short. Okay, so what I want to ask just now is, our next week, Tuesday, 31st August, is the public holiday. Am I right? Wait, I check first. I also don't know either. I think yes, 31, 31st public holiday. Public holiday. Okay, so Independence Day, Tuesday, 31st August. Yeah. So we need Monday night. Night? You want night? Oh, you have full class ka during Monday? Oh, so I don't know because if you all see my schedule here in Monday I am free at the afternoon. So you, yeah, don't drag to later the replacement. Oh, yes. So yeah, if you all okay with 4 until 6, then I'm okay. So can we have agreement here for those who agree to have the replacement class Monday next week 4 until 6 p.m. You can raise your hand. Okay, wait, I check first. Stop presenting first. Okay, so I see that Wong, Ian, and Daniel. Ah, okay. So next week we confirm. Next week, 30 August, 4 until 6 p.m. Your replacement class. Okay, so confirm lah. So do you guys have any questions, guys and girls? If not, then we can dismiss our class.
Miss, Thursday is presentation day, right?
Yes.
Thursday
Thursday,
is.
yeah.
Oh,
This
okay.
Thursday is our presentations. Okay, so prepare your part 2. Okay. I might be able. I'm. Oh, why yeah, Farah? May I, if you can tell why you are not available on Thursday? If no, then you can PM me later lah. But if Farah is not available, oh, okay, so it is expected there will be no electricity lah. Oh, 5 hours. Oh, so if like that, let me check who is your team member. Farah, there's Ivan, Kelvin, Russell, and Jeremiah. So if you all okay, uh, group 2. If all of you okay that Farah will not join you to present next week, then okay. What is OOF? Ian, what is the OOF? Open phone cam. Open phone cam. Meaning using phone, like mine situation last time. Oh, you open, you do the presentation using the phone lah. Yeah. So actually, Farah, you discuss with your group member lah. Because usually SSB ni, sometimes we hope it tidak jadilah. Sometimes they say that they have the notifications, but maybe they can finish early kan, who knows kan, of hopefully lah, or maybe they started late. Yeah, so you discuss with your friends, your team member, which part that you will uh, you discuss with your team member lah, because our presentation there will be 3 presentations, right? So maybe if you are not able to present this week, then you can do presentation on the 3rd week lah. I mean the 3rd presentation. You discuss with your friends lah. So if they are agree, then apalah. Okay, so Jeremiah, Russell, Kelvin, and Ivan, you can discuss with Farah about that. Okay, so we can dismiss our class now if you all don't have any questions. Okay, bye guys and girls. Okay, bye.